If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description. You are listening to Mindshock. This is Bruce McGuire.
And JR.
Today we're going over the enigmatic, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, John Lear. Former CIA government agent or agent in cahoots with the CIA, as I don't think it's officially on record that he was actually ever under CIA employment, or has that been officially verified yet, JR?
Except for analysts, Bruce, most people that are associated with the CIA are not under any kind of, they normally just work for the quote-unquote State Department. But keep going. You're
Yeah, so
rolling.
I know John Lear's been on your radar for a while. Do you know John Lear personally or no?
I'm not at liberty to discuss anyone that I know personally from the government. I will say that John Lear has made his presence from the government in multiple avenues. Not only as does his company provide actual products to the federal government, he's also a willing participant in USO benefits for the military and, so on and so forth. And he's also an advocate for government. So, yes, I know John Lear. I won't say I know him personally. I won't say I know anyone personally on your channel. But John Lear has a presence within the federal government, and he's positively received by most people. So
fair enough. We are going to be diving deep into some of these conspiracies. We got UFOs, aliens. We have dream factories on Mars. I know you've been waiting to discuss those.
yeah, and don't forget, his idea is that when something goes wrong on the International Space Station, they just spray a little Windex on the window and just make it happen. So yeah, of course.
And then, yes, so there's quite a few. I mean, he knows Bob Lazar. He's been intimately involved in almost every single major UFO conspiracy, every single major UFO documents link, every single major incident involving UFOs in the past few decades, in the past 2, 3 decades. John Lear has been behind it, or involved with it, or intimately connected to people involved with it. Is that a coincidence, JR?
It's difficult to say, Bruce. I mean, with a man of that wealth and that family, he has no reason to be involved other than, if he's not actually telling the truth, then, maybe it's like a hobby, But, it's not like he's looking to be famous. He pretty much already is in his own right without having anything to do with any of what you just mentioned.
Yeah, that is very interesting point. I mean, is this guy just an eccentric rich guy in industry? I mean, is he a billionaire or is he still in the millions?
I don't actually know his net worth. The company is within the billions, but I don't know his personal net worth. I know that, let's be honest, people that are technically in the millions that are associated with billion-dollar companies they can be in the billions without being on the Forbes list. So,
yeah.
And I believe he is on the Forbes list. I'm not 100%. Your viewers would have to check that out. But, yeah, he's wealthy. But when you get to that level of wealth, it's like Gump says, and I love how I bring up these stupid movie references all the time, but, there's only so much, money you need. The rest is for showing off with. So, he could be as eccentric as he wants. Look at the Koch brothers. Look at that one that, constantly buys wine that's fake. He keeps buying it, and it's fake. He might have $1 billion seller of fake wine, but he still keeps buying it. When somebody tells you that, hey, pay $500,000 for Thomas Jefferson's wine, and it turns out to be fake, he did that in the 90s. He's still buying fake wine. So,
all right. So
these billionaires, not to get off on a tangent, these billionaires, they could be as eccentric as they want to be. He took it into a level. If he's just being eccentric and what he's saying is not accurate, he's playing the part. Let's just put it that way.
yeah, so we're going to dive deep into anything and everything dealing with John Lear, what he believes, what he propagates, and what he's put out there. As always, if you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. You could also check your phone settings to make sure it's allowing those YouTube notifications to come through. Otherwise, you won't get it. Any questions, comments, thoughts, theories, just leave them in the comments section. You could like our Facebook page. You could also check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Patreon, and Patrons do get priority for requests. If you have any topics or cases you want covered, we will get to them in a timely fashion through Patreon. All right. So, JR, first of all, before I tell you how John Lear first got on my radar and how I found out about him, or to take him a little bit more seriously, obviously I knew about him decades ago just from the conspiracy field. Everybody knows John Lear. How did you first learn about the existence of John Lear?
Well, it's been honest, Bruce. Like I said, I've been in the military. I started out in the military. I was your typical asshole, grunt level with like no degree or anything, any kind of skill, whatever. When I joined the government, it's like they molded and shaped me in the fashion that they wanted to. So I didn't actually know about John Lear, but I knew about the aircraft. And ironically, it was years and years and years and years. I guess you could credit that to the fact that I wasn't educated when I joined the government, that John Lear was the same Lear as the Learjet. So it took a very long time for me to associate
Well,
the fact that
I actually didn't know that either when I first found reading some UFO conspiracies way back when on the interwebs in the 90s when it wasn't quite as in the mid 90s before it wasn't quite as popular. His name kept coming up, but nobody mentioned like in a lot of what I read conspiracy wise, UFO wise, it wasn't mentioned that he was the son of William Powell Lear, the founder of Learjet Corporation. It wasn't mentioned
yeah,
there, so I actually didn't know that until more recently as well.
and that's the advent of the internet. I mean, like our babies will look on us and laugh because I was of the age. I came from an era where I had the Bad Spellers Dictionary in the back pocket of my fucking pants, walking to school. I didn't have access to the internet in the way that like the youth does today. I mean, I remember playing around with my friends as a kid, looking at websites. Oh, well, let's look up this, erotic name, or let's look up this, curse word, and those domains were still available for sale. When I was, involved with the advent of the quote unquote internet, like Ask Jeeves or something. I was of the era where you had to type in exactly what you wanted with the correct spelling. There was no Google algorithm that you couldn't spell or you weren't educated or, you talked ghetto and you typed it in and it still came up with what you wanted. That didn't exist in my era in school. So, especially when I joined the military. So, even the military internet, which is very different from the civilian internet, even that, you have to kind of, at that level, when I was part of it, you had to type in exactly what you wanted to get what you needed. So I learned about John Lear actually quite late in life. I kind of feel embarrassed because I've done all of these things in my career, and it was like I had no idea who the hell this guy was. And he walks onto Alex Jones like he owns the place and talks about like all this crap, and it's just like, who the hell is this guy? You know what I mean? So it's like, and I know powerful people. You know what I mean? It's like I never knew this guy existed. So obvious, and being the fact that he's the son of the founder of Lear Corporation, obviously, like he has the clout to do something like that. So I kind of feel like an asshole that I didn't know about this guy sooner. But to be quite honest, Bruce.
So yeah, I've seen John Lear's name thrown around, like I said, late '80s, early '90s regarding early online talk, UFOs, aliens. He didn't come back on my radar until when I researched him seriously with the dream factories on Mars and all this insanity. Until actually a 9/11 documentary, believe it or not. The have you heard of the no planes theory?
I have, and and again, I've heard of the Dream Factory theory as well. That he propagates. So, yes.
So yeah, John Lear actually was in the intro of the documentary. That's when they first made the connection. John Lear, son of American businessman William Powell Lear, founder of Learjet Corporation. So he's this like son of this huge mogul Now let's go over his background real quick. He's a former Lockheed L-1011 captain who has flown over 150 aircraft and has earned every single certificate that is granted by the FAA during his 44 years of flying, and logged some insane thousands of hours of flight time across the most diverse multitude of air types of aircraft. He has 18 world speed records in different aircrafts, and also worked for 28 different aircraft corporations. So this is a guy that's been all over. He's had military involvement. He's done missions for the CIA allegedly, and as well as other intelligence communities. And he's also worked for 28 different corporations, and is this
Well,
expert pilot. He's an expert pilot, the likes of which the world has never seen. What is he doing saying that no planes, like, so I didn't take that no planes theory seriously. Like,
let me just play devil's advocate here for a second, Bruce. Let's look at the Mars family, okay? The Mars family is one of the richest families in America. It's a family-owned corporation. They mass-produce confections and chocolate, okay? A very unassuming, very, cut and dry kind of business, okay? Now, if I was the son of, I believe it's a lady. I don't know who's in charge of the actual corporation at this point. That would have to be put into the description. But that said, if I was the son of that person, yes, he's flown all these aircraft, but he probably owned an aircraft before his 18th birthday, just based on the fact that he was a Lear. It's the same thing as if I was a Mars child, I probably tried every type of level of chocolate that exists before my 18th birthday.
but would
In
you have
addition to
won?
that,
but would you
wait,
have
I'm
won
not
every
done yet.
single-
I'm not done, Bruce. Just give me a second here. I'm not done yet. So that said, yes, he might have government CIA clearances, but the Mars family produces a special brand of M&Ms that are only distributed in the White House to guests as well, which is a very highly secretive process. You would have to think that, like, most groceries that are produced or are provided for the first family, they're bought by special purveyors from regular grocery stores. Here we have a product that we know is being produced for the White House, that is being produced in a factory by people, okay, and is assembled and tested and sent to the White House for diplomats. So therefore, it's as secretive, and the process is as secretive, it could be as secretive, as being involved with quasi-military operations. I know that's a stretch for a lot of your viewers, but the truth is that a lot goes into that, just for M&Ms. So
Yeah, but that has almost
yes,
nothing to do. That has almost nothing to do with what I said, though. Like, for example, if they've tried every single type of candy bar, that doesn't mean that they've won every single different type of eating contest that there is.
but I bet you he could. I mean, I could. I mean, I'm.
Well, but they didn't. So the point is here. I mean, being a pilot, I'm not a pilot.
Well, how do you know though? You don't know. I mean, it's just not. It's just not important enough to where it warrants an award.
This guy has 18 different world speed records. 18.
That's very easy to do, Bruce, when your family owns a company that builds the planes that you're driving to make the speed records. That's like Dale Earnhardt Jr. making speed records.
Not in 150 different types of cars.
But he has 18 records, not 150.
Yeah, I know, but he's flown all of these air. Even
But let's look at it this way, Bruce. If you understand the primitive, you're able to fly the advanced, right? I mean, like, I'm not saying that again, John Lear is John Lear. He has his medals. They're like World Series rings. He's got them. You know what I mean? I'm not that person. But that said, if I was of a family in aviation, if they taught me how to fly a primitive plane, okay? I mean, just logic and mathematics and basic physics. If I know how to fly the most basic plane that exists, then every other advanced plane will be easy to fly if I know how to. I mean, like, look at the Wright brothers. If I master how to fly the Wright brothers plane, then every other plane after I fly that plane I should be able to fly with no problem, especially when computer guidance systems are like,
No, that
doing
I
most
don't
of the
think
work
so.
for
That's
me.
like saying like if you're really good at driving like a Model T Ford, you're going to be able to do some kind of like Bugatti or Lambo or like all these different vehicles have completely different systems. I mean, you have even analog brakes or all-wheel steering. I mean, we have a lot of these even in electronically controlled suspension, like all these different things.
Well,
Four-wheel
we're not
drive.
necessarily all right. Like, we're not necessarily talking to like Model T to Bugatti, but like, let's say like we know how to drive a Model T and a Bugatti. Then we know how to do everything in between, right?
There's a difference between being somewhat competent and winning every single award there is. I mean, there's a difference between that. It's kind of like athletes. Michael Jordan might be pretty good at playing baseball. He could probably play golf okay. He might even be pretty good at soccer. But he's not going to be the best of the best in everything. It's kind of it's you seem to not
But
want
we're
to
not
give
talking about
him.
every sport here. We're talking about a very specific field where he's an expert, and his family happens to like be an industry leader in that field.
Yeah, but how many times do we see the children of exceptional people in certain fields just not achieve anything? Because
Well, I mean, but that's based on their willingness to achieve. That's not necessarily based on their
well,
ability
yeah,
to.
and I just want to give John Lear credit here. John Olson Lear, that's his middle name is Olson, and born in 1950. He definitely wanted to achieve because even after all that, I mean, he worked for 28 different aircraft corporations. Does he have to work for anyone? If I mean, he's
No, he
the
probably
son of.
didn't from day one. But I mean, the fact that he was born in 1950, I mean, that also plays into my argument that he was a part of the progression of aviation as a craft to begin with. I mean, aviation in the 1950s was a hell of a lot different than the aviation of today.
Look, if this isn't what the podcast is about, we're gonna get deep
No,
into
but let me just say this, Bruce. Again, I'm not going off on a tangent, but let me just say this. In the 1950s, aviation was something that was actually relatively not new, but it was robust in that it was expanding rapidly.
Okay, was
In
it?
the
Is it? Weren't the
70s,
military?
wait, just bear with me. In the 70s, it became something of a luxury. In the 80s and 90s, it became something of a hassle. Today, it's something that's just point A to point B. So he saw a vast progression in his own life that, allowed him access, especially, again, as a member of a family that was involved in the actual innovation. And he didn't have to work. It's not like he had to, like, hold down a full-time job while he was winning these awards. You know what I mean? So
Well, maybe he did. Maybe he did. He worked for 28 different corporations. We don't know the dates. I mean, I don't know the dates of all those different awards and speed records, and I don't
it
know.
would have to be in the minutia of the podcast. But, I mean, again, move on. Because I understand that you don't want me to go on about this.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. Also, with the top secret military aircraft that we don't even know about, the Learjet Corporation's cutting edge prototypes that we don't know about. We have no idea what he was flying when he was flying it. So there's a lot of unknowns here for him to accomplish what he accomplished. Anyway, so I'm circling back now almost 20 minutes because you interrupted me. When I first heard of John Lear, seriously, not just in passing with some of these UFO conspiracies, was when he was on this documentary on the no planes theory. Now, I always thought the no planes theory was kind of silly because if people saw the, I mean, again, this isn't a good argument. You saw it on TV. Yeah, I mean, there's some monster movies on TV. It doesn't mean the monster movies are real, but it seems like, again, someone who hadn't put in a lot of research at the time into 9/11, it seems like physical objects hit the towers, doesn't it? Just in passing without scrutinizing every frame. And here comes John Lear, one of the most accomplished pilots in the history of aviation, and he's saying there's absolutely no way any publicly known aircraft, like not even fighter jets, could make those banks at those degrees in that amount of time and hit the tower at that speed. So we're talking, this guy is not some schmo. Like, this guy knows his aircraft. And he's saying this. That got me to consider the theory seriously. I still don't know. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I know what went down. I'm not even sure if we're going to do a 9/11 podcast because people view that as just so extreme and controversial. I will say this. I mean, obviously, it looks like controlled demolition. That doesn't prove who did it. You know, just you can't jump again. It'd be logically fallacious to jump through. Oh, that was a controlled demolition. That must mean the U.S. government was behind it. I'm not sure I'd go. That's kind of a jump to conclusion. I'm not going to even ask you any questions about 9/11. I'm just
I
going to.
will. Yeah. I mean, I'll interject, Bruce. I mean, like honestly, like it seems. I mean, it's a controversial thing, but I'm not going to go there. You're not going to go there. We're going to move on. I will say that I'm no expert on aircraft physics. I don't know if you are or not, but I'm not. I can't dissuade or agree with his projections. However, I will say that I did listen to the podcast that you referred to, and what he said made basic sense. So that
Well, they
moving forward.
actually, if you watch the full documentary, they actually got in touch with Boeing engineers who designed the
Yeah,
747.
I know what you're talking about.
And
I'm trying to move forward.
they fed them the exact specs. They said it was completely impossible for that plane to bank at that speed, given the weight of the plane and the degrees and the angles. But yeah, without getting into that, anyway, John Lear's saying this, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So what? And then he's saying they were holograms. And then he points to all this about hologram technology, hologram patents that were instituted many years before that the technology existed. So that was my introduction to John Lear. Major
I
introduction.
will say that I think that his hologram theory. I mean, I'm not saying that what he's saying about the actual like collision is necessarily wrong, but I think his hologram theory is off by about 10 years, if I might say that.
You mean
In terms of technology.
are you alleging the technology wasn't available yet in 2001?
I'm not alleging that it wasn't available. I'm alleging that it may or may not have been, been in military laboratories and accessible to the
I believe
level that
he
he's
produced
alleging it was.
the patents. I believe were produced in the early '90s, and
Doesn't matter what patents were produced. I'm telling you
well,
that
you
the actual
interrupted me.
implementation
Well, the
was
implementation was already done publicly in, I believe, '98. They had
to the
real
level that he's expressing. I'm just
to actually a greater level. You haven't seen the promos for, I believe it was Godzilla in Japan. I think it was
you
'98.
don't have to argue with me. I'm just giving my opinion.
Well, also you have to factor in if we all know that military technology is far in advance of civilian technology. So if they had that civilian technology in '98, I
They
don't.
definitely had what he was expressing. I'm saying that the actual ability to implement on a covert level, I believe, was a little beyond what he was stating. And that's my personal opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
Have you watched the frame by frame where the plane goes through the building and there's no
I'm
explosion?
sticking with that, Bruce. That's
All right, fair enough.
all I have to
Fair enough.
say about that.
Fair enough. I'm not going to make a determination either way either. I just think it's I don't think that theory can be easily dismissed when there's a bit of evidence to
Let's
support it.
just make an appointment for a separate podcast where we can
Yeah,
get
I'm not
into the
even
minutia
sure. I'm
of
not
that.
sure we're even going to get into that. It's just it's almost not worth it at this point. There's too much weirdness all around in that regard. But that was my introduction to John Lear. After that, I see him talking about dream factories on Mars on like coast to coast radio. And I'm like, okay, does this guy have a few screws loose? Or like how can he be that bored to make it up? I mean, this guy's a prestigious pilot. I mean, he's esteemed in very different. I mean, we're going to go through his full background here. This guy was a state senate candidate in 1980. I mean, we're not talking a random schmo looking for attention here. Like, what's his motivation? Or is he simply just a government shill? If you haven't checked out our Government Shills podcast, check that out on the channel. It goes pretty extensive into Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, David Icke, some of these shills. We did not discuss John Lear too much in that podcast. We're discussing him now, not specifically in terms of being a shill, but some of his theories that we will be going over. So he's a retired airline captain, over 19,000 hours of flight time. That's a lot of hours. He's flown in over 150 different types of craft in 60 different countries around the world. He's the only pilot ever to hold every single FAA airplane certificate, including airplane transport rating, flight instructor, ground instructor, flight navigator, engineer, aircraft dispatcher, airframe power plant mechanic, power chute rigger, and tower operator. Okay, I don't care if you're the son of the guy that made Learjet. That's insane.
It is, and I'm not dissuading his. I mean, he has a very impressive career. It far exceeds most aviation experts, and the fact that he definitely has he commands a certain respect regarding his aviation experience.
I actually didn't even know that he was an airframe power plant mechanic.
Well, I mean, again, I mean, I think that comes with his own company. I mean, like Daddy didn't want him to be just, glad handing business people. I mean, I think that comes with his own internal family organization where they wanted him to know the nuts and bolts of every aspect of his corporation. And I think that in that respect, they made him, work at every level. I mean, if I had owned that or you had owned that, and you might expect that of your own child. So I don't really dissuade that. I think it's a feather in anyone's cap to work at that level, for to understand the systems at that level.
And if that wasn't even enough for him, he flew secret missions for the CIA in Central and Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa between 1966 and 1983. He has flown as captain and check pilot for over 10 different airlines. Why is he flying for airlines when he has all this other experience? I mean, it seems like he does it for fun. Like, why would you do that? I don't get it. Like, you're like the greatest pilot in the world. Why are you working for regular airlines?
Well, I mean, again, and that you would have to watch my other podcast or with you where I discuss the implementation of government shill. I mean, that's a perfect example of a government shill. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you're being thrown thousands and thousands of dollars as an experienced pilot, where you have the perfect cover as the son of an airline. Where it's not even airline owner. Like you're actually like you're the son of an airline manufacturer, where you have the perfect cover. So why not? I mean, you're being thrown thousands of dollars to fly, like trajectories where no third world or second world country is going to question you because they just want to be able to afford to buy your aircraft. Like, why would they question your motives? So, I mean, it's the perfect cover. I mean, again, I hate to say it. I've said it 1,000 times on your podcast. The government serves itself. Why wouldn't they finance someone where, like you have the perfect cover imaginable where, yeah, Daddy owns the company. So here's our Learjet. I mean, like, that's when they fucking touch down and, the fucking, hit squad comes out. Yeah, Daddy owns this company. Like, we landed here to show you this jet, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't matter what's inside. I mean, there could be fucking bricks of coke in there. They don't give a shit. They just want to know that, like, so, I mean, yeah.
All right, let's move on. He has held 18 world speed records, including speed around the world, in a Learjet Model 24 set in 1966. He was presented with the Patco Award for Outstanding Airmanship in 1968 and the Simon's Wave Memorial. He was the youngest American to climb the Matterhorn in Switzerland in 1959. The climber, too. And in the 1970s, he owned and skippered the America's Cup boat, the Soliloquy, out of Marina del Rey. So I mean, okay, that's above and beyond being the son of an aircraft manufacturer.
Well, I mean, okay, at this point, like, we're talking about John Lear in terms of, like, he likes to collect rings. I mean, like, Sonic likes to collect rings. Like, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, like, it's, at this point, like, we're talking about, like, he wants to live beyond his family's scope, right? So, I mean, like, he wants to climb the Matterhorn before anybody else, in the speed, outside of anybody else. I could understand that. If I was living in the shadow of Lear, and I'm not, I'm clearly, you're not, I'm not, but if I was living in that kind of shadow, I mean, think about that as an individual. I mean, you might want to make a name for yourself outside of your own family. So I can see that. I mean, he's an athlete. And, clearly, like, he had selectively chosen situations where he knew he could perform to advance his own personal worth outside of his family
And he seems to have done
based
that. He
on,
seems to have done that in spades.
I mean, again, like it's living under the oppression of that kind of shadow that might produce that kind of
But
level. He's not the only secondary person. I mean, look at a lot of other, families of very famous people. They've done a lot of great things. I mean, even Chester Weber, like all these. I mean, like
of this kind of scope, where in multiple different fields.
some people are a little bit more robust. I mean, like they might want to do it, but they can't physically do it. In this
Okay,
case,
anyway, you're
he
getting
could.
sidetracked. You're getting sidetracked again. That wasn't the main point, but clearly this guy has spent a lifetime gaining prestige and respect. Why is he throwing it all away talking about dream factories on Mars if in fact that's not true? If it is true and he's blowing the whistle, we'll get to that theory in a moment. But if it's not true, why would he blow, like, he spent a lifetime gathering this prestige and respect?
But when it's self-initiated, he can do what he wants with it. I mean, again, like the government's credibility is based on several factors. I mean, whether or not what he says is true or is not true, the fact that he's done everything you just expressed and then says that carries more weight than the government saying, "Oh, it's not true."
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right. He was senior vice commander of the China Post One, the American Legion post for soldiers of fortune. He is a 20-year member of the Special Operations Association. I mean, that has military intelligence connections written all over it. John is the current owner and operator of the only permitted gold mine operation in Cutthroat Mining Corporation in Clark County, Nevada. His efforts to clean up the Treasure Hawk Gold Butte mine won him the State of Nevada Award for Excellence in Mining Reclamation in 1999. John is an MSHA Mine Safety and Health Administration and holds a blaster license from the Nevada State Fire Marshal. Are you
Yeah,
impressed
but
yet or no?
when you have millions of dollars to like become educated on these different crafts, yes, I'm impressed that he went to that level. Am I impressed that, he did it as an indigent? No. I mean, clearly he's from an American family that was of upper crust and he had upper level values. I mean, I'm not going to espouse political values because that's not part of your channel, but I will say that, like, he had the ability where others simply financially were unable to achieve that on their own merit.
But on the other hand, when you do have that much money, usually people just go to the country club because there's no need to go to that
There is
level.
no. I don't think. I think that's a part. I think that usually. I think that there are people that do. I mean, look at Richard Bronson. Look at like James Cameron. Look at like where he's going to the depths that no one else. I mean, like there are certain people where like I think at a certain level of money you can do what you want and it becomes far-fetched. I think that like the fact that John Lear, I think that he had the amount of money where he could have gone far-fetched, but he didn't.
All right.
He went
That's not what the
pseudo
podcast.
far-fetched.
That's not what the podcast is really
No,
about. I'm still trying. I'm
wait,
still
just,
trying to
just, just,
finish.
just
I'm
listen
trying
to
to.
me. I think he went pseudo far-fetched. And I think that's what makes him so interesting. Like, if he had said, "Oh, well, I'm going to go deeper into the ocean than anyone else before me," and he had spent billions of dollars doing it or millions of dollars doing it, no one would question him. But he does these subtle things where he's just like awarded for these like military or pseudo-military type accommodations, and then he talks about dream factories on Mars. I think that like that makes him more interesting than people that delve into the level of the retarded and where it's unattainable, like Jeff Bezos, where oh well we're gonna ship
You're
Amazon
going off on
packages
tangent.
to.
You're going off on tangents again. All right. So, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, he was a Republican state Senate candidate in 1980. In
And
19
we're not talking about politics.
In 1988, John met and became friends with Bob Lazar, the government scientist who worked on the back engineering of the propulsion system of the extraterrestrial UFOs at Area S4, that's just outside the infamous and ultra secret Area 51. So we actually touched upon this in the previous podcast on government shills that yeah, Bob Lazar was on the Joe Rogan podcast and he basically reiterated his story, which in the past few decades becomes almost validated in all the new information coming out, the people that can verify he did work where he said he worked, and all of this craziness and the government erasing his identity. We will be doing a dedicated Bob Lazar podcast, so we're not going to go super specific into Bob Lazar. But real quick, just for the listeners, do you believe Bob Lazar is genuine?
As I told you before, Bruce, I'm not at liberty to talk about anything as to Nevada. So,
All right, so that's
yeah.
perfect because we are going to be talking more about Nevada. So, in March of 1989, Lazar actually took John Lear to an area close to Rachel, Nevada, where he witnessed the flight of a flying saucer at the exact time Lazar told him it would occur. So, have you seen that video, by the way, that old VHS tape of the UFOs flying around? That Bob Lazar and his buddies would actually go out in the desert and film these things
I'm
multiple
not
times.
at liberty to talk about anything that has to do with Nevada, Bruce.
It's a good thing you're on this podcast then. 2 weeks later, on another UFO spying mission, John Lazar and 3 others were caught by security forces. And the next day, Lazar lost his job at the government program for the breach of security. Lazar has been branded by many as a fraud, a charge to which John responds, "Those who say that Lazar was a fraud simply don't know the facts of this incredible 12-month period. I was there, they weren't." During the late 80s, John Lear tracked down and found the Army intelligence analyst who read, probably by accident, the U.S. government report on Grudge 13, which documented the history of the U.S. UFO cover up and details of saucer recoveries, disposition of their occupants, and handling of civilian witnesses. Do you know anything about Grudge 13?
I'm not allowed to talk about anything that has to do with Nevada, Bruce.
That's not specifically, I'm not sure that's Nevada.
I'm not allowed to talk about anything that has to do with Nevada, Bruce.
So, for those that don't know, the Grudge 13 report is the alleged contents of the missing Blue Book report number 13. Are you allowed to talk about Blue Book? I mean, that's been declassified.
Yes, that I'm allowed to talk about. But you're talking about aspects that involve Nevada. So, you know.
Well, Grudge 13 isn't
specific. It's going to be really hit and miss here from now on, Bruce. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not allowed to talk about anything about Nevada. Like, Nevada's a really fucking shady fucking state. I mean, you know, if we're talking about Massachusetts, you know, okay. You know, we're talking about Maryland, hey, you know, like, I love crab cakes. We're talking about fucking Maine, hey, you know what? I love lobster roll. We're talking about fucking Nevada. There ain't nothing there but fucking, you know, like, you know, I plead the fifth. That's what we're talking about right now, Bruce.
So the report, this Grudge 13 report, allegedly includes clear photographs of recovered extraterrestrial craft and beings found inside. It further detailed how recoveries were made worldwide and specially designed transports to accommodate the craft. So can you speak on these non-Nevada, non-US recovered crafts? Do you know anything about this? UFO crashes or UFO crafts that were recovered from other countries?
Come on, Bruce. I mean, like, you know, like, we're gonna play stupid here and say that, like, you know, nothing lives outside of the fucking Earth. I mean, you know, come on, like.
Well, I don't know. The flat earthers don't even believe in other planets. So
yeah, well, you know, well, like, they don't believe in a lot of shit. I mean, come on. I mean, like, look, I've worked for the government for a lot of years. All right, like, look, like, you know, like, some people might have seen something. They put it in a box marked classified. It was shipped to a warehouse. I've talked to you before about that. That's my standing. I mean, you know, like, you want, like, this, like, you know, cut and dry answer. I've worked for a lot of, like, you know, secretive, classified, quote-unquote garbage. But, I mean, like, you know, like, when it comes to shit like this, like, you know, yeah, like, the government knows a lot more about like space and extraterrestrial like shit than like elites on. I mean, like you think that like what we're all right. Let me just put you into perspective here, Bruce. All right, like I read some garbage in the Times the other day, where like they finally found out that there was some sort of magic shit on Mars, where like there was some sort of methane that was produced. You don't think they knew that in the fucking 60s? You didn't think that they knew that, like, there was a possibility of life on fucking Mars in the fucking 60s? I mean, come on, Bruce. I mean, like, it's a game. The problem is like, the American people don't give a damn. So, I mean, like, yeah, they're going to play the game. So, I mean, like, yeah, there's life on Mars, okay? I can fucking tell you that. Why? Because the fucking methane readings, they've been fucking receiving them and fucking transmitting them for fucking years. What do you want? What are you asking? I don't understand.
Do you have any knowledge of UFO craft being recovered by the U.S. government?
Not personally.
That's all
I've
I
heard a
was
lot of
asking.
garbage.
That's all I was asking.
I've heard a lot of garbage. But no, not personally.
So, other things regarding the Grudge 13 report, and this is a summary from the Occult Connection: UFOs, Secret Societies, and Ancient Gods, Volume 1 by Ken Hudnall. The Grudge 13 report said that aliens had contacted a U.S. intelligence agency for initially 2 meetings, one at Holloman Air Force Base and one at Homestead Air Force Base. 2, the U.S. Air Force relocation personnel responsible for moving persons involved in close encounters of the third kind were referred to in the report as Men in Black. Once again, if you haven't checked out our Men in Black podcast, check those out. We go into Men in Black encounters. 3, it was Bill's impression that the entire Grudge 13 report was written as if the report was geared towards preparation of defenses. There were several sections on possible weapons that might prove effective against the aliens. 4, the report told of ultrasonic weapons, an ultrasonic cannon found in Germany at the end of World War II that could shatter 4-inch thick armor. We're not going to get into that in this podcast, but some people believe that that Germany during World War II was in contact with extraterrestrials and somehow got extraterrestrial technology. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Well, I mean, no. Honestly, I don't have any knowledge of that. But I mean, like, let's look at just like, I don't know, normal brain function for a second here. And why would extraterrestrials wait for the United States government to become a country in 1776? Like, why didn't they, like, contact other countries before that? And, like, what is Stonehenge? I mean, like, I believe that, like, if you want to believe in extraterrestrials, you need to move a little bit beyond Area 51. If you're a serious believer in extraterrestrials, if you believe that, like, extraterrestrials waited around for the United States federal government, to become a part of everything, you're just an asshole. I think that if you believe in extraterrestrials, I think you need to move a little bit further beyond in your time scope to, like, I don't know, say, like, the Egyptians or something like that. And, at that point, like, there is physical evidence. At this point, like, no, there's no evidence, quote unquote, with the federal government because there's, like, all these restrictions and hierarchies and stuff like that. But, like, again, like, if we want to go, like, for the conspiracy, let's go for the conspiracy. Like, why are we doing the whole Area 51 thing? I kind of feel like that's, like, a whole showpiece, like, to, like, book rooms in a motel close to Area 51. Like,
Well, because
if we want to do the
if
whole...
Bob Lazar's story is true, I mean that's one step in confirming instead of just theorizing about Egyptians,
Well, I mean, like,
obviously has.
what about the actual, like, emperor, what about the actual, like, Egyptians that existed, like, 500 years ago, and they had stories of extraterrestrials, like, what about them? Like,
We'll get to them. Let me finish the Grudge 13 points. The report told of sensitive military and industrial areas at which personnel experienced missing time. This appeared to be an area of extreme sensitivity. 5, the report referred to one UFO that was recovered and test flown. The UFO blew up as the two Air Force pilots aboard attempted to leave the atmosphere. English recalls the date as the mid-50s. 7. The report refers to flying saucer program as Project Red Light and mentions that a secret installation had been constructed in the middle of the Atomic Energy Commission testing ground in Nevada. This is the area now called Groom Lake. Let me guess, no comment on that?
No, Nevada. No comment.
8. At the time of the report, allegedly 11 alien cadavers were being kept at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. 9. Additional alien cadavers were being stored at several medical institutions. 10. Two alleged flying saucers of extraterrestrial origin had been tested in the wind tunnel at Langley, Virginia. Are you allowed to talk about Virginia?
It originates from Arizona now.
Arizona? What are you talking about?
Bruce, just keep it going.
11. At the time of the report, one damaged disc was at the Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. 12. That at the time of the report, there had been 2 UFO incidents at Fort Riley, Kansas. Do you know anything about those?
I plan on taking my 2 youngest to Florida. Disney World, they just opened that fucking exhibit with the Star Wars. I plan on taking them there.
What does that have to do with 2 UFO incidents at Fort Riley, Kansas?
I'm nothing, but you're talking about Florida, so I just thought.
Yeah, but I just mentioned that there was also 2 UFO incidents at Fort Riley, Kansas. Not 1, but 2.
I don't know anything about that.
13. At the time of the report, a detachment of the Recovery Team Alpha was based at Randolph Air Force Base. 14. The report discussed civilian and military personnel who had been terminated, quote, to eliminate potentially dangerous elements to national security, end quote. As referred to earlier in our discussions regarding MJ-12, they were killed to protect the, quote, secret. And why do you always get so weird when we mention MJ-12? Like, you're not allowed to talk about that either?
Bruce, look, certain people are liquidated from the federal government because, they know too much. I'm not proud of it. You shouldn't be proud of it. It's part of our government cycle. It's kind of like the Civil War. There were a lot of people that died. You don't remember their names. That's the way it is with UFOs. When you see something you shouldn't see, most people that are not involved with the government, they're like, oh, wow, I want to know, I want to see, That's the worst thing in the government that if you actually work for the federal government, anybody that's listening to this that's part of the federal government will chime in and agree with me. You don't want to see dick. You want to just go through your fucking 25 years or 20 years without seeing shit, and then you want to fucking get your pension. That's it. You don't want to see anything. That's why there's this whole secretive crap. Nobody wants to talk about it because nobody wants to, any actual government agent, any real government agent will not talk about what they see in the scope of government because they don't want to be involved. There's a lot of shady you see a lot of fucking sketchy shit when you're involved with the government, but nobody wants to say anything because they just want their pension. They have a family. They have babies.
But what about the whistleblowers?
What whistleblowers? Most of those people are full of shit, Bruce.
So you don't think there have been any legitimate ones?
Of course there are. I'm not saying that there haven't been. Of course. I'm not saying that there haven't been legitimate whistleblowers. But, those people have nothing to lose. So, that has to be... Yes, of course. There are whistleblowers where it's really legitimate. But with every circumstance, and it's a case-by-case circumstance, you have to classify the ones that say, oh, I saw this, next to the ones that were like, oh, I didn't see anything. You have to classify based on what they had to lose based on saying that.
All right, let's get back to John Lear.
Okay?
John Lear has spent time poking around other UFO
and you're talking about, and your whole podcast is based around someone that has nothing to lose because he's a billionaire regardless. So, yeah. So he doesn't give a shit about, people that make, $30,000 a year as like, like Joe Public. I filled the the UFO with fucking gasoline, and like, I just want to go home and like kiss my baby and like be able to, afford to like feed him. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's what you're dealing with. You understand that when you say this.
You already made that point. So John Lear spent time poking around other UFO-related areas to include Dulce, Socorro, Aztec, Alamogordo, Albuquerque, Los Alamos, and Bentwaters Air Base near London. Since that time, John has learned many incredible and interesting facts about the solar systems and planets, including the existence of huge structures, arches, bridges, and domes on the moon, cities on Mars, huge extraterrestrial ships mining the rings of Saturn, the incredible but secret agenda of Apollo 17, to the huge rectangular opening in the south massif of the Taurus Littrow Highlands called Nansen.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Valley of Taurus Littrow, and this is the South Massive at the upper right and the sculptured hills at the lower left. I mean, we're talking about moon photographs here. I'm not sure what he's talking about. Huge rectangular opening.
Well, I mean, if he's talking about civilization shit, it should be video and everything else, right? Like,
I mean, these are just alleged photographs of the moon. I mean, it could be CGI. I have no idea what this is.
but if you got people living on Mars, like, there should be like video, right? Like, I mean, like,
I'm not
we're
sure.
not talking about the '80s. Like, we're talking about like today, like where like your phones can capture whatever. I mean, like.
Well, this is information that was put forth on with Art Bell on Coast to Coast, and I mean, this interview occurred on November 2nd and 3rd, 2003, but some of this information he has put out before. But yeah,
So the interview is over 16 years old.
this particular one, yes, where some of these ideas originate, but they're probably even older than this. I mean, John Lear's been talking this kind of stuff for a very, very long time. So, John Lear suspects that Venus does not have the sulfuric acid atmosphere with an 800-degree temperature that we've all been led to believe, and instead is a planet very similar to ours, but with a similar but much more technologically advanced civilization. John Lear believes the government has very good reasons for their continued cover up, but refuses to discuss them. He also believes the government never ever intends to release any UFO information, and if forced to say anything, will obscure, tangle, and weave a deceptive lie. Asked outright if the public has a right to know these facts, John says, no, they don't. Why? Because, was his admittedly evasive answer. Then why, after 10 years of silence, is John Lear talking once again? After almost 60 years, the majority of the U.S. population doesn't believe that Roswell happened. I certainly do not represent a threat to this kind of security, he responds. So apparently he was silent for 10 years. I don't even remember the exact time frame because, like I said, I didn't really get reintroduced to him until after the 9/11 documentaries were coming out.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Like, there are 128 governments that exist like within the world and not beyond the United States. Some of them are very much our allies, some of them are not. If those 128 governments, and that's an estimate because they're governments that wish to not be included in that survey, of that 128 governments, I would think that if he had come across something like that, one of them might have made, I don't know, a deal or a negotiation or something that did not involve the United States, where there might have been some sort of precipitation.
Maybe they did.
Well, they didn't because there is no precipitation.
Well, how do we know?
So, because 10 years have gone by, so, I mean, like, that's kind of a long time for any other government to enact some sort of negotiation with a foreign power, let alone a extraterrestrial power. So, Yeah, I would say that what he's saying is horseshit, but
All
I
right,
mean
well
that's just my opinion.
let's address what you said before about him having nothing to lose. So Art Bell asks, why after 10 years of not a peep, why now? Lear responds, well, you know, the government in charge of this cover up works so well at making your life miserable when you go around talking about this stuff that I quit. And my life, the quality of my life improved about 200%. But now the cover up is so well in place that they certainly would not be threatened by me going on the radio just once and saying what I know. And Art Bell says, yeah, well, you lost jobs because of this, right? And he responds, yeah, I lost two. I lost one with an airline and one with a government program that I really wanted. It was with Lockheed. And they went for my clearance, and they were told by the Air Force that now, under no circumstances, would John Lear ever get another clearance. Now I had a clearance up at the test site for some of the work I did with Dynelectron. It was just monitoring below ground tests from the air with different airplane. But that clearance is still there, not active, but they weren't going to renew it under any circumstances, and they made it plain. So it's cost me a little bit, but I managed to survive. So apparently it did cost him jobs and clearances.
Okay.
So yeah.
So the son of a billionaire, like, he might not be able to work on this project, so like he's like, you know, I guess he's gonna have to apply for Medicaid or something. Like, I mean, he might, like, what, like, you know, he might not be able to, like, do what, like, he might have to, like, what, apply for Medicaid as the son of a billionaire. Like, I mean, come on, like, this is bullshit. Like, he just says what he wants to say because he's a sensationalist and he can get away with it because he's the son of a billionaire. And that's it. Like, it's like Koch brothers. Like, that one with the wine. Like, yeah, like, his collector. But, like, every wine he collects is a fucking fake. So, I mean, like, he's a tool. Like, I mean, you would think after, like, having millions of dollars, you'd be able to, like, collect wine that isn't fake. But, like, no, he doesn't. Like, he's an asshole. I mean, like, and no political ambition or whatever. Like, he's an asshole. That's it. Like, I mean, like, I mean, like, Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, like, they have more success than John Lear because, like, they at least throw themselves out there. Like, he has no reason. He's like this personality where it's like, oh, I'm John Lear. I'm the son of somebody. I want to talk to you about dream factories on Mars. I have no actual evidence to talk about it other than Windex, you know, cleaning the screen of, you know, aircraft on Mars. But I'm going to talk about it because I'm John Lear. And because my name is Lear, I hold credibility. Like, that's it. Like, I mean, come on.
Well, you know what's funny is that John Lear's father, William Powell Lear, supposedly there were certain connections to UFO technology.
It probably was because, like, he actually did the nuts and bolts of the business. You think his fucking son did? I mean, like, yeah, like, if we're talking about the father, then yeah, like, you know, hey, you know, like, I was building these aircraft, and all of a sudden the government came to me and said, hey, you know, we
Well,
got this fucking
some people might not know
saucer.
this connection with the father, but I mean, in the Cosmic Conspiracy, this is a 1978 book. William P. Lear, inventor and chairman of the board of Lear Inc., one of the nation's largest electronics firms specializing in aviation, for months has been going over new developments and theories relating to gravity with his chief scientists and engineers. He is convinced that it will be possible to create artificial electrogravitational fields whose polarity can be controlled to cancel out gravity. All the mass materials and human beings within these fields will be part of them. They will be adjustable so as to increase or decrease the weight of any object in its surroundings. They won't be affected by the Earth's gravity or that of any celestial body. This means that if any person was in an anti-gravitational airplane or spaceship that carried along its own gravitational field, no matter how fast you accelerated or changed course, your body wouldn't any more feel it than it feels the speed of the Earth. And this is from Eugene M. Gluharoff, president of the Gluharoff Helicopter and Airplane Corporation of Manhattan Beach, California, has made several theoretical designs.
What year?
This was published in 78, but
Okay,
I'm
so
guessing I'm
let
guessing
me
this is
break it down
referring.
to, well, I mean, just as a lifelong government lecturer, let me break it down for, like, your customers. Okay, 78. So let me break it down for,
Hold on, hold
you
on, hold
know,
on. This was when the book was published, so some of these statements might have been 60s to the early 70s. So 69 and 70, there was there was a question to William Powell Lear and how he envisioned the next 20 years producing a new technology. Mr. Lear told him that a person would be able to, say, walk into a New York travel booth, somewhat similar to a telephone box in shape, deposit his fare, push a button, and walk out the other side of the booth in San Francisco, having been teleported across America in seconds. The studio audience automatically laughed at Mr. Lear, much to their uninformed discredit. Mr. Lear just gaped at their performance in utter amazement. How painfully sad and lonely he must have felt that moment when he realized the great gulf that separated the viewing audience from the realities he had already witnessed in the laboratory. And then one more thing. In the book The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, Donald Kehoe, published 1957, Donald Kehoe mentioned on pages 200 to 201, on February 2nd, while visiting Bogota, Colombia, William P. Lear, manufacturer of aircraft and electronic equipment, told a news conference that flying saucers are real. When Lear's story was flashed to the United States by the Associated Press, or by the AP, it was a hard blow for the UFO censors. But this was only the beginning. Within 24 hours, Lear amplified his first statement. I feel the flying saucers are real, he said, because of 4 points. First, he said there have been numerous manifestations over long periods of time. Second, many observations have been made simultaneously by reliable observers. Third, there are great possibilities linked with the theory of gravitational fields. Fourth, there are now serious efforts in progress to prove the existence of anti-gravitational forces and to convert atomic energy direct to electricity. This new AP story dismayed the Pentagon, for it could easily disclose our top secret research to duplicate the UFO's propulsion. There had already been one hint, despite Pentagon precautions. During a meeting of aviation leaders in New York on the 25th of January, G.S. Trimble, vice president of advanced design for the Glenn I. Martin Aircraft Company, had made an amazing disclosure. Unlimited power, freedom from gravitational attraction, and infinitely short travel time are now becoming feasible, he told the press. Then he added that eventually all commercial air transportation would be in vehicles operating on these fantastic principles. So, this is William Powell Lear. Most people don't know he's been mentioning UFOs as well. So, this was not just his son that said this.
right. Okay, so do you want my analysis, or
Yeah,
do you want, like,
go ahead.
what year is this that he said this?
So this book was written in 57, so it was before then.
Okay,
And
so
other
this
books,
was before Kennedy, right? Like,
yes. And
so,
some of the other mentions were
let me
69.
just, like, throw a couple, like, like, bones out to the audience. So, okay, so if I was the government, I mean, again, like, you can look at me any way you want. I'm a janitor or whatever, like, whatever. Like, but let me give you the government perspective. Like, all right, this guy's a whole bunch of shit. It's classified. All right, so, like, but we can't trust that he's not going to go public. So, like, let's send a fucking schmuck to the moon. That'll keep the people interested. Okay, so, like, okay, we did that. He's still talking. Okay, so, like, let's throw the government in the boom. Like, I mean, like, we're talking about, all right, so we're going to throw people in orbit. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, like, like, yeah, he says a lot of, like, really sophisticated stuff, but at the end of the day, public doesn't give a shit. Problem is sales and marketing. Like, that, if this all calculated to, like, like, people, like, yeah, if we did this, your smartphone would be more impressive. There would be, like, this big push publicly. But, like, there's not. So we move back to science concept of NASA, which we're not going to talk about in this podcast. But we need to, because, I mean, like, this is where we're talking about NASA now. So, I mean, like, ultimately, he says a lot of stuff. His son says a lot of stuff. it could be legitimate, it could be not legitimate, but like ultimately, like it's not respected by the people. So
Well, let me do a quick overview of some of John Lear's theories and the so-called dark side. So, this is along ufology's fringes. This is an article by the editors of Publications International Limited, and it was actually posted on science.howstuffworks.com. It's a pretty funny overview, John Lear and the dark side. In recent years, new and even wilder strains of paranoia have sprouted along ufology's fringes. Inspirations comes not just from UFO rumors, but from conspiracy theories associated with the far right end of the political spectrum. The two major figures in what has been called the dark side movement are John Lear, a pilot who once flew aircraft for a CIA-linked company, and Milton William Cooper, a retired Navy petty officer. Bill Cooper, that is, for most people. According to Darksiders, a ruthless secret government controls the world. Among other nefarious activities, it runs the international drug trade and has unleashed AIDS and other deadly diseases as population-reducing measures. The ultimate goal is to turn the Earth and surrounding planets into slave labor camps. For some time, the secret government has been in contact with alien races, allowing the aliens to abduct human beings in exchange for advanced alien technology. The aliens, known as the Greys because of their gray skin color, do more than abduct human beings. They mutilate and eat them as well, using the body parts to rejuvenate themselves. The secret government and the aliens labor together in vast underground bases in New Mexico and Nevada, where they collect human and animal organs, drop them into a chemical soup, and manufacture soulless android creatures. These androids, who are then unleashed to do dirty work for the government alien conspiracy, are best known to the rest of us as the Men in Black. With each retelling, with the appearance of each new and expensive book, video, or tape, the dark side story gets crazier. In one version, the conspirators travel into the future to observe the emergence of the Antichrist in the 1990s, World War III in 1999, and the Second Coming of Christ in 2011. George Bush oversees the world's drug traffic. The secret government has maintained bases on Mars since the early 60s. The conspirators employ drugs and hypnosis to turn mentally unstable individuals into mass murderers of schoolchildren and other innocents. The purpose is to spur anti-gun sentiment, resulting in gun control legislation. Thus, Americans will be disarmed and defenseless when the secret government stormtroopers round them up and herd them into concentration camps. What do you think? Any truth to any of
well,
that or no?
no. I mean, first of all, like, well, yes and no. Does the government have any involvement with UFOs? Yes. Does the government have any involvement with extraterrestrials? Yes. Does the government need to like use those tools to implement gun legislation? No. I mean, like, come on. I think that, like, there are certain aspects of highly classified, unidentified systems that are utilized by our government. Whether or not we're in cahoots with those individuals, I would give a resounding no. I think that, like, if you look at the galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy, if you're going to say there is no other intellectual beings beyond us within the Milky Way galaxy, you're an asshole. So, yes, I think that the government is actively involved in research revolving around other beings in other planetary systems. Whether or not we've made contact, I think that's a sort of debate, but I think that the whole idea that we have, and there's this whole convoluted thing about our own personal issues regarding our government, I think it's bullshit. I mean, like, if we really made contact with UFOs, you'd think that we'd be worried about, like, the minutia of our own personal political beliefs. I mean, like, come on. Come on, dude. I mean,
I
come
gotta
on.
say, you're talking awfully similar to a shill that's putting out disinfo or a
Chill, whatever. I mean, like, it doesn't matter. I mean, like, whatever. I mean, like, whatever you want to classify it as. I mean, like, think about it logically. I mean, like, if you, as a personality, forget government. As a personality, if you reach and access a government agent, like, or a extraterrestrial being, would you be worried about, like, the political party in which it was involved with?
I mean,
I mean, come on.
if it's all smoke and mirrors for the peons, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, even medieval kings and queens had
Why
those
would
certain types of.
the why would the why would the extraterrestrial beings be involved with parties?
Wait, what do you mean? I mean, all if that's just all controlled opposition, if that's all a distraction
But if
from
it was controlled, why would it be an issue? Like, why would it be?
to distract everybody. It's the old magician's trick. You're not going to know the real truth if you're looking over there. So look over there instead of
Why?
over here.
Why would they give a shit if they had that level of technology
Well, you're missing too. There's too many
behind
pieces of the
your
puzzle.
own?
There's too many pieces of the puzzle missing. I mean, you're kind of going for an appeal to incredulity fallacy where you're saying,
If you met an extraterrestrial that had the ability to just touch down and influence, why would you be worried about political parties?
I don't
Why
understand
is that?
I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it sounds like you're just straw manning now. Like, who's worried about political parties?
It, it's bullshit. I mean, like look, I mean, like, there's movies and there's theater or whatever, but like, if you actually met an extraterrestrial being that touched down into your world, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat, why would you care about their political beliefs within your structure? Would you even ask them about political beliefs within your structure?
I guess not, but I'm failing to realize any connection of what that has to do with anything. I mean, yeah, you wouldn't. That doesn't mean they didn't give you technology. I mean, I don't understand. Like,
You're talking to me about, like, like, whether or not, like, they're gonna do X or Y or Z. Like, why would they give you any political or technological information in there?
if they wanted something else, I don't know. I'm just saying when you have missing pieces, that's
What would they
it's
want
like
from
saying, well,
you if they touched them?
why would a serial killer kill people? I mean, why would they do that? I mean, I don't know. I'm not the serial killer. To me, it's stupid. I would never do that. But that doesn't mean the
But I
serial killer.
mean, like, we're beyond that. I mean, like, we're talking about people hurting people within our own confines. We're talking about, like, right
Yeah,
now, we're
but you would
talking
never
about.
you would never know. I mean, if an ant like why an ant can try to figure out our motivations for doing this podcast, they're not going to be able to do it. I mean, that doesn't mean we're not doing the podcast just because an ant or a
Right,
cat
but
or
what you're talking about is, like, if a locust came down and gave us information and expected an ant to respond, like, what would it be? Like, so, I mean, like, ultimately, like, the whole, does, does do other evolutions exist within our universe? Of course, but, like, why would they want to contact us? What's their
yeah, but
game?
playing the what if, I mean, you're playing the what if game without having, I mean, if you don't know the truth is whatever it is.
But I mean, we're talking about the U.S. government as if it's the reason why UFOs. I mean, like, like, why would the U.S. government be considered, like, the reason to respond? I mean, like, like, if if we were living in a world where we knew of other universes or other planetary populaces, why would they care about us in any respect? And what's their
Well, I
game?
don't
I mean,
know. Like humans,
the U.S. government might be powerful
why do
on our
humans
planet, but, like,
why would
why would they give a damn about their planet
well,
and their
you
motivation?
asked the question three times instead of asking it a fourth time. Why don't you just let me answer? Why do humans care about wolves living in Alaska? I mean, why do they abduct them and then chip them and then monitor how they interact with other wolves? I mean, humans are far more intelligent than wolves. Humans have built cities. Why do they care about wolves in Alaska? Why do they travel all the way out there in their advanced spacecraft helicopters, advanced to wolves?
But if you want to believe in, like, actual interplanetary initiation, if UFOs, if there's, like, cow piles or, cow eggs, or if there's people that are abducted, why would they give a shit about us? Why would they want to negotiate with the United States government?
Well, I just answered that question. There's a lot of missing variables. Why? So, like, let's say if anytime someone goes anywhere, it's take me to your leader. I mean, when the conquistadors went to, went to conquer South America, they didn't go deal with the little people in tents. They wanted to go to Montezuma. Like, they want to take, they want to make the deal with Montezuma. They want his gold. They want whatever power over the region. They want what, like, they don't deal with the peons.
But what
So,
if they don't want power? What if they don't give a shit? Like, what if they don't want take me to your leader?
well, we don't. Well, maybe they don't. We don't know. I'm just saying you're at like there's unknown variables at play here. The truth is whatever it is. You being able to figure it out, or some random human being able to figure it out, doesn't negate it if it's the truth. I'm not saying it is the truth, but you not knowing somebody's motivations doesn't mean the event didn't happen. Like you not knowing why certain countries made deals with other countries in certain wars or just whatever political agreements. There's a lot of political agreements that don't make sense to me, but I don't have all their facts. I'm not the Queen of England. I don't have the information they're working with on why or why not they would deal with this NATO treaty or why or why not they would want this or want that. You're not them. You don't know what they want. So how would you know whether it would make sense or not? I mean, you stacked a mountain of unknowns. Like that's not nowhere near enough information to say whether it makes sense or not.
Well, you're also stacking your nose yourself, so.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that did or didn't happen. I'm saying my understanding of something with almost no knowledge, I'm in no position to say why would they do this or why would they do that. I have no clue. Just like I have no clue why a serial killer would kill people or why I have no clue about a lot of things that actually happened. I can't give you a good explanation for things that actually happened. How am I supposed to give you one for things that may or may not have happened? Not
Well,
having
what if
information.
they threw what if they threw you money?
What do you mean?
What if they threw you money?
The aliens?
Yeah,
I don't know.
or whoever. Like, let's say like $500, like for 2 hours to do what they want. Then what?
I don't know. What does that have to do with anything?
I'm
Yeah, let's get to the part of the podcast that you know you wanted to get to. Let's talk about the moon, and Mars. John Lear alleges that we control alien technology, and there are colonies on the moon and Mars. In an interview with the famous mystery program Coast to Coast, John Lear, a retired CIA pilot, revealed such amazing things as having secretly gone to the moon since 1962, which have been on Mars since 1966, colonies on Mars since 1966, and that NASA uses technology from alien spacecraft that crashed on Earth in 1953.
okay.
In 1953, an ET ship crashes. They capture the ET, which they called the EBE 3. Joe Road, also confirmed by Dan Burish, who helps the U.S. government air forces to build these spaceships with extraterrestrial technologies. In 1962, they had vehicles that could not go faster than the speed of light, like the vehicles of the ETs, but fast enough to reach the moon in 1 hour. They could make regular trips to Mars. Quote from John Lear, "We made regular trips to Mars in 1966. Mercury, Apollo, and the rest of the missions were just decoys to distract the population's attention about what we were really doing. They were building several buildings on the moon. In 1966, they landed on Mars and since then have already explored most of the planets in our solar system. And they have found that there is life very similar to ours in all of them. In the 1970s, before NASA began to erase without leaving a trace the photos taken by Apollo 8, 10, and 11, and published in 1971 in the NASA book SB 246, you can see a city, a space base, tubes, vegetation, air, an atmosphere, 66% of gravity with respect to the Earth. There is light, mining operations, and a nuclear reactor. In order to do this, extraterrestrial corroboration has been necessary, and many buildings on the moon were already there before the operations began. This has been done over the past 40 years. John's father had been involved in the mid-50s in anti-gravity technology programs, as we discussed, completely secret technology today. According to a source by John Lear within the government, he told him three things. We've been going to the moon since 62. The population of Mars is 600 million, and they are exactly like us. He has worked with a part of the mining equipment that was to go to the moon, he said. John, we built this in Alabama. It was so big that when we finished the project, I took a small plane and flew over this piece of equipment to get an idea of how big it was. How convenient that John Lear himself is involved in mining operations. You think that's just another coincidence or what?
No, not surprising.
The most amazing thing is that there are great authors. Okay, so basically, a lot of other people have said the same thing. And then John Lear actually gives lectures on these moon bases and these Mars bases. Most of these photographs, I've seen a lot of these, and these are all public. None of them are classified, just images from the moon. Some people think they're all CGI in order to trick people into believing there's going to be an alien invasion and then one world government will emerge. I'm sure you've heard that theory, right? We might have discussed that.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think there will be a very difficult government interaction that involves not necessarily them, kowtowing to any particular government, but like there will be a very difficult internal government approach, followed by something along the lines of what you're talking about, where there's a government consultant. So, yeah.
John Lear's also mentioned there are two civilizations on the moon. One is human like us, and they live on the surface. And then the Greys have their labs and live underneath the surface of the moon in enormous cities, which have laboratories where many of us spend brief visits.
Have you ever read the book Time Machine? Like, yeah, like seriously, like, yeah.
And John Lear said hundreds of thousands of people live on the moon, but they are not from Earth. They are from Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and other planets.
Okay.
He said the atmosphere there is equal to 18,000 feet here. You have to go through 1 week of decompression before a visit. Their commerce system is solar system wide.
Okay.
John, then someone asked John, did you once say that our souls went to the moon when we die? John Lear says there are many transfer stations for our souls. Some on Earth, some on the moon. Some of us are reincarnated immediately, some later. What do you think about that?
You don't want to know what I think about that.
I want to
Okay.
know what you think. I want to know what you think about that because
It's bullshit, but I mean, like, let's move forward.
so someone asked him about what Mars is like. John Lear says Mars is Earth-like right now with populations of billions. It is a very busy place. The pictures you see from NASA are taken in Antarctica and Canada.
We've got John Lear here who's talking about like all this crap because after all, like if his family dies, like he's got a mausoleum. Like let's work through that convoluted project. Like what does he have to say about that?
I don't know.
Okay, so yeah, like he can talk about dream factories on Mars. I'm talking about burying my loved ones. So let's talk about him and his Windex clearing the little window on the fucking International Space Station and all that. That's fine. But at the end of the day, he's got his own private mausoleum when he dies because he's a Lear. So he's got his own little situation. So yeah, like I'm not really concerned about what he has to say about, when it comes to the nuts and bolts of beginning and end. I mean, like we want to talk about, like the concurrent, like yeah, of course. I'd love to hear about his life and what's going on, but like when we're talking about like graveyards and death and thunder banks or scattering of a loved one, I really don't give a shit about what John Lear has to say because he has more money than I've ever had, and I really don't give a shit whether or not he's part of he shit out from a pony or he's donkey dust. So that's it.
John claims that there's a soul harvester on the moon.
Good for him.
I mean, where do you think he came up with this stuff? Do you think someone really told him that, or he just made it up himself? Like, if
When you have access to, like, like any drug you want as a billionaire, it's like, I mean, like,
do you
I
think he
mean,
believes?
maybe it's
Let's finish.
real. Maybe he, like, like,
Let's
maybe he had class. Like, I don't know.
let's finish this up with. Do you think John Lear believes what he is saying?
Yeah, I think he does. Whether or not it's real, yeah, of course he does. Whether or not they're not mind-altering substances involved, I'm not at liberty to say. But, I think that some of the stuff he comes up with, I'd love to hit that glass. Because I live in the real world, so I'd love to hit it. You know, he can let me know anytime.
What do you think about all those anomalous images released by NASA where they show like artificial, it just seems
Bruce,
like artificial
Bruce,
structures on Mars, the
Bruce,
moon, etc.
Bruce, you know my aspect of NASA, so I'm not going to respond based on, I want your people to understand my full understand. I don't want to bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want a full video explaining my rationale behind NASA. So,
Okay,
yeah,
fair
like,
enough. So we hope you guys learned a lot about John Lear, his various theories and claims. I mean, some of these claims are just so preposterous. Billions of people living on Mars. I mean, it's almost so preposterous that it seems like it's more likely he's not lying, right? Because he must know how this sounds, unless he's just screwing around and he's just like some billionaire prankster.
well, he
But
doesn't want just, Windex. He wants Windex outdoor. Make sure, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, yeah.
or he really does know people and they told him this, or they might have been pulling his I mean, I might catch some flack for conspiracy theorists about this. What if certain people that he came in contact with who do have those advanced clearances, what if they were just screwing around with him and told him that, and then he came out and said it and he believed them, or at least he believed them that they thought it was true regardless of whether he believed it himself,
Like, it's tax write-off.
for saying all this stuff. I
For,
mean, he's giving lectures. Like he's actually giving lectures on this. He's not just going on one radio show. Like he actually gives lectures on this material.
okay, tax write-off.
All right. Well, there you have it. We will be doing other episodes on Bob Lazar and other vast conspiracy rabbit holes. And down we will go into those. But we hope you enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock podcast. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Questions, comments, theories, just leave them in the comments section. Like our Facebook page, you can also check us out Twitter, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off.
Thanks, guys. Having us.
We'll catch you guys next time.